guys, so we are back. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm so excited. Deb is back with us for our interview series.
Hi, guys.
And so today we have another special guest. Her name is Laura, and she has a very amazing story of the one word again that always comes to my mind with these stories and these interviews is redemption. And it's because God played such a huge role in her life of not only walking her through healing, but also taking it a step further where Laura actually pressed charges against one of her offenders. So I met Laura through her going through our Trees of Hope study called Shelter from the Storm. It's our women's healing study that is 12 weeks long, and it's for any woman. You can be a C-level woman or you can be an addict. It is for you. And it does not, I always say sexual abuse does not discriminate against any type of person, right? And so you will find all kinds of women in these groups. And it's actually what makes it really cool and awesome is because everyone's coming from all different walks of life. And that's something that Laura, really stands out to me is that she is that high level person at a very, large company and she's making high level decisions, type A personality. And she came to a place in her life where she realized that this has affected her so much that she needed to walk through healing. And I'm so thankful that Trees of Hope was there for her in that time period because honestly, I don't know of another resource that would bring you deep into the all the different things and all the different situations that led to your abuse and then how the abuse has affected you. So I'm so thankful for Trees of Hope and I'm so thankful for your story, Laura. So let's get into it. Before we hear about your story, tell us a little bit about who you are currently today.
Okay, so I am a mom to an amazing son. He's been married for 7 years now. They just welcomed their first baby, so I have a beautiful year and a half old granddaughter, and I am married for 7 years also. I have three Rottweilers, five chickens. I love animals. If I could buy hundreds of acres and just go and rescue every animal from every animal shelter, I would and just, you know, live like that and be happy. But we did rescue our recent dog, so that's a little step in the way. Um, but I have a great support system with my friends and my family. I've actually been at my job for 22 years, so I have a great support system there who really helped me through my whole progress and just the whole journey going through it. I had many people from my boss to a few of my coworkers who were actually, my friends outside of work that were there for me also.
Nice. So that's so important, right, Deb, to have that great support system, not only
Yeah.
through your journey through the shelter study, but also after, because in my opinion, it's after where things really start to get real.
Yeah, for sure. When you leave that program, if you don't have people who want to walk with you through the ups and downs that happen after the 12 weeks, it's a hard journey. So it's great
Hmm.
to hear you have a good support system. I think
Hmm.
that's probably the key to most of the success, besides the hard work you did to get to healing, but that progression of, hey, life is still hard after you're done healing. It's an ongoing journey. So
Yeah,
that's
for
good to
sure.
hear.
Tell me a little bit about your story. I want to ask you a few other questions about it, but give me the details on what took place. How did you come to Trees of Hope?
Okay, so when I was 9, I was sexually abused by my mom's boyfriend, and nothing really, it happened over a weekend time. It happened 3 times during that weekend. Um, Nothing ever came out of it as far as justice or, anything with that. We ended up leaving about 2.5 years after the incident. Then, when I was 13, I was raped by a family member um, multiple times. And because nothing really happened when I was 9, when that happened at 13, I was really scared to come forward for two reasons. One, because he was very violent and he had
lots of issues. So I was afraid that if I said anything at that point, that since nothing happened at 9, then at 13, and then if nothing happened, then he would probably end up doing something to myself or my mom. So it ended up coming out when I was 15. But by then, I had already had sexual relations with someone else, so they couldn't go in and do a rape kit or anything. So nothing could really go forth with that. And then reading years going forward, reading what I read, they were saying that since it was child on child, they consider it experimental, which
Mm.
that doesn't make it like it's any better because it's not. Um, so those are the things that, really messed with my self-esteem, how I felt about myself growing up, my body image, because a
Mm-hmm.
family member had said that, oh, well, she used to walk around in sports bras, so she was asking for it. So of course, growing up, did not like my body. I wouldn't show, anything. If I could wear a turtleneck, but then, when, you're a female, some females are, you know, bigger in body parts, and even the turtleneck didn't even cover it. So it made me very insecure with that. And it's definitely taken many, many years to get past that and realize that, just like Sue says in the Trees of Hope, there's you have three choices. You could be laying in the middle of the road naked. Somebody can come and help you. Somebody can do what they did, or they can just walk away. And for my situations, they did what they did. And that's affected me. But, with God and through Trees of Hope, it's been able to, for me to say that it wasn't my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't ask for this, and it shouldn't happen to anybody else ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and to clarify, I think what Sue was trying to say here, and correct me if I'm wrong, is she's trying to point out that it's never your fault. You could be laying there butt naked, or you could be wearing a military uniform,
Yes.
completely head to toe, or like
Mm-hmm.
a Muslim garb, right? Where you're
Mm-hmm.
completely not totally covered. And a
Mm-hmm.
person is going to sexually abuse you if that is their
Intent.
propensity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It does not matter what you do.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree 100% with that. And that really does help take the blame off the survivor. The unfortunate thing is that somehow you've been, or I know I was, and I know Deb was too, you're programmed to believe through the lie that somehow you played a role in the situation.
Yeah, it did very much so, because I wouldn't wear like certain tops because, my cleavage was out, or things like that. Like even just walking around in a sports bra, it's taken me a very long time, and I'm 50 now. And, that the rape happened when I was 13. And still now it's like, I don't want to show like too much, even though I know, again, it's not my fault if I do wear something, but it's still just in my head that, especially since the family member said, because I walked around like that, I was asking for it.
What was the issue with your family member? You said he had some issues?
He had issues from growing up. He actually set the trash can on fire in kindergarten, and yeah,
Yikes.
he was not a nice cousin.
Yeah.
So
So I want to talk a little bit because I've heard your story before, and one thing that you mentioned to me when I first heard it was that you told your mom about what had happened to you. And first,
yeah.
before we go any further, I just want to point out that is statistically speaking, through Trees of Hope, what I've learned, it is unheard of that you would do that. So first, again, you seem to always be brave, and that's the word I think of when I think of you is bravery. So tell us a little bit about that and how that affected you on however your mom responded.
Well, the weekend that it happened, my mom had, I was supposed to go on a Girl Scout camp out, and I didn't go. So I was home alone with my, her boyfriend, which we had been, I mean, that wasn't the first weekend I was home alone with him. We lived with him since I was 4. And that just happened to be the weekend that I guess he decided to, after looking back now, many years of grooming me and telling me, just belittling me and telling me I was stupid and things like that, I guess gaining his trust and just feeling just so down on myself. He took advantage of that at the time. I did tell my mom. Um, and at the time, she just wasn't capable of taking the steps that really needed to to handle the situation. But since that time, my mom and I have rekindled our relationship. We have a really great relationship. She says she wishes she could go back and change things. She would have left right away, called the cops, whatever, to protect me. And she regrets every single day. And I've forgiven her for that part,
Yeah.
of what she did. And then because I've learned through Trees of Hope that you have to forgive. It's not for them, but it's for me.
Yeah. So, okay, so take us now through the portion of the story where you you continued to live with him or no?
Yes, for another about 2 years.
Okay. And how did that affect you?
It was really hard. Um, and I also did not meet my dad until I was 11. So I didn't know my dad growing up. So when I met my dad when I was 11, after that happened, um, my mom's boyfriend at the time was already really jealous because my dad was in the picture because, he had already groomed me and everything else. And now my dad's coming into the picture. So it was really awkward and hard and uncomfortable. But I guess from the trauma, looking back now, I just put it in the back of my head and just tried not to even think about it. Because I used to, it was weird because I would feel like people would look at me and they could tell what happened to me.
Mm,
Like we relate to that, right, Deb?
very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's just this cloud of shame around your whole
Hmm.
life, and
Hmm.
you feel different than other people. You feel like
Hmm.
you look different, you act different. If they only knew what had happened to you, they would see you differently.
Right.
Did you have, after the experience on that weekend, you had mentioned, as we were kind of pre-briefing, that your mom, stayed another 2 years. Was there, did you feel like you had to protect yourself? Did you lock yourself in the room? Were there any
Yeah.
things that you did where you were like, I don't know when this is going to happen again?
Yeah, I did. I locked myself in the room when I went into the bathroom. We had, the bathroom that I always went in, it had the main door, then it had the sinks, and then it had the little sliding pocket door for the shower and the toilet. And I'd always lock the front door, and then I'd lock the little sliding door just in case I was in the shower.
Right.
Um, even like going outside, like in the swimming pool. We had a pool and I used to go swimming. I even felt like uncomfortable and insecure going in the swimming pool that I had been swimming in since I was 4.
Hmm.
Mm.
So it made it very, like there was no more after that. There was no more like sitting on his lap or having that fatherly figure that I thought from 4 until 9. That was the only father that I really knew,
Yeah.
but then after that, it was kind of like it was like I knew in my head it wasn't right, it was wrong, but I didn't know at 9 how to like,
Articulate.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Wow.
It
Sorry.
just it's so heartbreaking when you hear it. It's so, as a mom, it's so heartbreaking to hear this. It's not fair that you had
Hmm.
to redirect your whole life, your innocence, your childhood, your joy because this pervert wanted to violate you.
Hmm.
Now, tell me a little bit. You mentioned the grooming part, that he had groomed you all those years prior by calling you stupid and names. Do you think what he was doing the whole time, because I think people have a really misguided view of what grooming is. Um, do you think the whole time when he would call you stupid and all that stuff and insult you, it was desensitizing you?
Yes, I do, because like I love dolphins. Like that was my thing growing up, was I just wanted to be a dolphin trainer. I wanted to work with dolphins, and he was a boat captain. So we would always go out on the boat, and I would lean over the front and I'd watch the dolphins swim. And then sometimes he would come home from fishing and he would tell me he caught dolphin. Well, I would start crying because I thought he caught flipper. I didn't
Oh,
realize there was
dolphin.
mahi, dolphin.
Yeah.
So I would start crying. So I think he used all of that just to get me more emotional, because I was never really like an emotional
Yeah.
child. I mean, I'm an emotional woman, but not to that point that I would like get that upset. But I think he used all of that just to try to get me to, I guess, feel more comfortable with him. I don't know
Mhm.
what went on in his sick mind. Only God knows that one, but
Maybe to
you,
fear him.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like, I'm gonna kill the one thing you love, even though
mm-hmm,
he wasn't killing Flipper. He
yeah,
knew it affected you.
mm-hmm,
He purposely didn't inform you that it wasn't Flipper. He
right,
purposely, right. And so you later on in your life, you learn that Mahi is also dolphin.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was a sad day for me too. I just want to say that because I had no idea there was two different types of dolphins. So I also want to preface the reason why we're digging a little bit deeper into the story and asking questions because I usually don't do that. And there's a reason because oftentimes when survivors have to answer these questions in a more detailed point of view, it's hard. It's really hard, right, Deb? And it can like re-trigger somebody. But you're different. The reason why you're different is we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. So that's why we're going a little bit deeper, asking more questions, wanting to know the scope of the story. So tell me a little bit now, where does your heart and mind go about that time period in your life before we get to the second abuse?
First off, I couldn't have done any of this without God, like without prayer and God. And, I actually have my life verse tattooed on my wrist here, Peter 5:10. In his kindness, God called you to share in his eternal glory by means of Christ Jesus. So after you have suffered a little while, he will restore, support, strengthen you, and he will place you on a firm foundation.
Preach.
Amen.
And he has done that every single day. Every time I have prayed, from going down to the police station, I mean, just through all the years, just from going down to the police station all the way up until today. I know he's there. I know I just pray and, he answers it. It's not my timing, it's his timing. But, it's definitely been a journey, but the way I was handling it before, it wasn't working. So definitely God has, changed everything for me.
Yeah. So you were sexually abused a second time.
Correct.
When I was sexually abused a second time, although it was through a visual thing, and then later through sexual harassment, there was an ongoing conversation in my mind that
Mm-hmm.
was, here we go again.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening to me again. What am I doing that I'm always making this happen? How do I always
Mm-hmm.
get myself in these situations?
Mm-hmm.
Did that happen to you?
No, and I think it was because it was two, like, completely different situations. Like the first one was, without going into details of everything, first one was what the sick person made me do to him, and then the second one was what the person did to me. So for me, it was two different situations.
Okay.
But for the second, I call those situations, the two things that happened to me, I call, like if I'm ever talking to my friends, family, my husband, it's 9 and 13.
Mm,
That's how I relate it. It's 9 and 13. I don't want to talk about this because that was my 9-year-old situation or whatever. So that's, for me, I mean, everybody's different, but for me, that's how it helps me not get triggered too much.
okay.
Because I don't want to take my whole years of 9 and 13, because there were a lot of good things that happened. So I don't want to just, relate everything that was bad to that. So that's why it's just 9 and 13. But yeah, at 13, when the rape happened, that was a really tough year for me because sorry, my father had just passed away in July, and I had only known him. Okay, stop crying.
No,
And
keep crying. It's
Okay.
deserves to be crying. It's sad.
Very sad.
um, and I had only known my dad for 2 years, but I still remember the first time I had met my dad. It was like an instant connection. Like I was raised with him, and it felt like that emptiness that I had, it was filled. And then when I was 13, and he took his own life. He
Oh,
had a lot of alcohol and drug problems when I was growing up, and he had cirrhosis of the liver. And this was back in the 80s. I don't know all the rest of the details of everything, but I do know that he had cirrhosis of the liver. So he ultimately took his own life. Um, so that was really hard, traumatizing thing for me because the one person, and I never even told him what even happened because I just didn't want to ruin that relationship, and I honestly don't even know what I even thought at 11 when I did meet him of not telling him. I wish I would have went back now and told him. But when that happened at 13, I was already dealing with, the trauma of losing my dad. And that's when my cousin took advantage of that and did what he did to me. And again, like I had said, um he had a lot of problems. He, was in trouble in school, trouble outside of school. He was a bully. He was a bully to myself and my other female cousin. He'd always, every time we'd get together, he'd always pick on us, and not like in a loving cousin way. It was like in a mean bully, just, it would just make
Evil.
even,
Yeah.
yeah, it was just, even just being in a room with him, it was
Yeah.
just like even before all of that happened, when we got together, it was just like an uncomfortable cringe, just like, oh, I don't even want to be around him.
Yeah.
So when that happened at 13, um, and he had threatened that if I told anybody, that he would kill me and my mom.
Oh my God.
And we had shared a room. So it's not like I could go to my mom and tell my mom, hey, mom, this happened. I want to sleep in the room with you. Because then my mom would probably wonder, like, why do you want to sleep in the room with me? What's going on? And I was scared that if I told her and that nothing happened, like at 9, that he would end up killing me and my mom. So that went, until I was 15, until I told an ex. And that's when, my mom ended up calling her sister, and my other aunt got involved. And at the time, I believe he was in a mental hospital, but nothing could be done because I had already had sex, so they couldn't do a rape kit. And that's when my aunt had basically said that I'd pretty much asked for it by walking around the house wearing a sports bra.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's horrible.
I know.
Absolutely horrible. And I wrote an article recently for our website in regards to what were you wearing? And they do this across the United States and in other countries where they literally feature clothing that people are wearing when they get assaulted. And we're talking about like sweatpants and
Mm-hmm.
jeans, and it has nothing to do with what you're
Yeah,
wearing. And if
yeah.
no, if a rapist is going to rape, doesn't matter if you're in sweatpants or you're in a sports bra.
Mm-hmm.
And that lie is very pervasive in our culture. It's not just stuff we tell ourselves, it's what the culture says about it. And it's misinformed, and it bothers me deeply because I had, somebody else say to me, "What were you wearing?" I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I was wearing a business suit when it
Yeah,
happened. That's what I
yeah,
was wearing. Like it
yeah,
doesn't. So I'm really sorry that your aunt said that to you. That's painful, but
yeah,
it's a
Yeah.
lie.
yeah,
I'm glad you
yeah,
know that now.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the program helps us to work through those lies.
For sure. I mean,
Yeah.
because even before the program, I was still, I was in my 40s when I went through the program the first time in 2019, and
Yeah.
even then, and even now, still, I'm very self-aware. I try to, make sure that not too much is out, just because it's still like in my head,
Mm.
and I don't know if it ever go away. I keep praying to God, just take that part away, that I know it wasn't my fault. I know that I could have stood there in a bikini or naked, and it still shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Right. 100%.
It's, I'm so sorry.
Mhm.
I don't think, you know, this job is so hard to like listen to these stories. And I know like our listeners, they're listening to the story, but every time I hear these types of stories, my heart is just like, how can somebody take without any care or concern for somebody else at all? And yes, there was mental health issues, that's fine, but I still think there's responsibility,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Because I know many mental health people who have really hard, core stuff that don't
Hmm.
sexually abuse.
Yeah.
And so, would you also say that your aunt, you had to consider her as like a co-perpetrator when she said that to you, as in you had to heal from that wound?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like it took years. Like I remember what ended up happening years later, which was in 2015, was my female cousin, which the only one I claim my cousin now, she had come over and her daughter had made a comment about my cousin. And I just looked over at my other cousin. I'm like, who is that? And she knew the story. She knew what had happened years later, but her daughter didn't know. And we're both like, no, I don't know that person. And she's like, yeah, it's, our aunt's name, her son. And my cousin ended up shutting it down. So when we get back upstairs, my husband's like, so who is, and said my cousin's name. And I said, it's my grandma's daughter's son. And he's like, so that's your cousin? I said, no, it's my grandma's daughter's son. He's like, babe, that's your cousin. And at the time, it wasn't my aunt, wasn't my cousin, did not claim nothing. So he's like, okay, what's going on? So we sat up on the counter of the condo that we lived in. And about 4.5 hours later, I shared with him the whole story about 9 and 13. It started with 13. He's like, has anything else ever happened to you? And then I told him about 9. And he was just like completely floored. And he's like, and you're who you are today? And I'm like, and what am I going to, and this was before I was even saved, baptized, Trees of Hope. This was literally about a month and a half after him and I started dating.
Okay.
And I had told an ex before about the 9-year-old situation. And we were actually sitting in a restaurant one time and there was a TV show on where the stepfather sexually molested the little girl. And he's like, oh, look, that happened to you, didn't it? And I'm just like,
Wow.
Okay. I guess I'm never sharing this again with anybody. But I don't know if it was, definitely it was God's timing in 2015 that I had the support system and everything else for me to actually be able to, just get everything out and move forward. Because before, I look back now and there's no way I would have been strong enough or I would have had enough courage to go through and, do what I did.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get to the part of the story where it gets harder, but then healing begins. So we go uphill, we have to go backwards just to go forwards. And what I mean by going backwards is you ended up, after that conversation with your husband, you ended up pressing charges against your first perpetrator.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
I mean, again, I go back to unheard of, does not happen. And it just it's shocking that you had the courage and the bravery to do it. So tell us the story of, take me to the point where you call the police and you share what happened.
Okay. Can I just share one thing first? So
Mhm.
I had read something one time years ago that said, behind the heart of many strong women lies a memory of a broken little girl that had to learn to keep getting back up and never depend on anyone.
Mm.
And I believed that for so long. And that's why I was just always, I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to take care of my child. I'm not going to depend on anyone. And I didn't realize until I, found God, that I needed to start depending on him. And once I did that, and once I started trusting and depending on God, it completely changed my life.
Yeah.
And like I always say with things, it's not always, excuse me, it's not always rainbow skittles and unicorns. Just because I went to church, just because I was saved, it's not always that, but it's definitely a million times better than it was before I gave my life to Christ.
Yeah. And I would add also, like, I think because a lot of times Christian women who think they're saved, or they are saved, they are baptized, their leadership, whatever, all those things, they are also tell themselves, well, I have God, I don't need to go back and look at this thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important to go back.
Yeah, for sure.
Your relationship deepens with the Lord as you go back into that place. Now, do we
Mm-hmm.
want you to stay there? No,
No.
that's the point, right?
Mm-hmm.
To move
Yeah.
forward. So, okay, so now bring us to the point where you call the police and you share your story with them.
So it started with looking up the first perpetrator to see, like, is he still alive, what the statute of limitations was, and everything else. And then I had found out that under the age of 12, there is no statute of limitations. So I could be 70. And if he was still alive, I could still press charges.
Wow, that's good to know.
Yeah. So, and every state's different, but I know that is in the state of Florida.
Yeah, I was gonna just add that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I told my husband, I was like, I want to go down to the police station. He's like, okay, you tell me when. So I'd be like, okay, I want to go next Tuesday. Fine, next Tuesday come, the devil would get in my head. Excuse me, the devil would get in my head and I wouldn't want to go. Next Tuesday would come, wouldn't want to go. Finally, I come home from work one night and I'm like, I want to go. He's like, when? I said, now. He's like, let's go. Didn't even give me a chance to even back out. Went down to the police station and had to go down to North Miami Beach because that's where I had lived when I was 9. Went down to the police station, told them I needed to report a crime. The officer came outside, took my story, and was like literally just standing there kind of like looking at me like, you're a grown woman and this happened when you're 9 and you're just reporting it. I could just feel the look. He didn't say it. But he just was like looking at me. And then my husband was kind of standing off on the side and he's like, he needs to continue to stay over there. I was like, that's my boyfriend. He's been here. It was only my boyfriend at the time. I'm like, that's my boyfriend. He knows what happened. Like, I'd rather have him over here with me. So he finally took the report. A few days later, the detective called me and he said, can you come down and give a written statement of what happened? So I did. And he, he took a piece of paper over the table and had it, upside down. And he's like, I'm going to show you this picture. I just need to confirm if this is him. And right when I turned it over, I said, yeah, that's him. He's like, how can you tell? I was like, well, we lived with the guy from the time I was 4 until I was 12. And I said, and I'll never forget that face and I'll never forget those eyes. Mind you, it's years later, it was his driver's license picture when he was like in his 60s. He's like, okay, just want to make sure we have the right person. I was like, well, here's his address of both of the houses that he has. Here's his phone numbers. Here's this, here's that. And he was like, oh, you did all your research. I was like, I went on just to get everything that I possibly could. I did that actually for both of them, for the 9 and the 13.
Wow.
And so then he was like, okay, well, we're going to submit this to the state attorney's office. And then we're going to, we'll get in touch with you if we have any questions.
May I just interrupt? How old is this perpetrator when you did this? Like now, how old is he?
Let me see. Hold on. He was born in 1945. My math today is not working out very well.
Whoa. So
even though I work in accounting, he's over 60. Yeah, let's see. 1945.
You know what?
63 years.
God is going to get.
He's 80. He's 80 today.
He's 80? Whoa,
he's
we're
80
20
now.
years off. Wow.
Yeah, bad math.
But even that
yourself,
at 70, but even 10 years ago when all this happened, he was 70.
Wow.
When I went down to the police station.
And I say that because people that commit crimes think like it's not going to catch up with them. And
he was so arrogant that he didn't think it was, he really was. He was so arrogant, he didn't think it was ever going to catch up to him.
That makes it all the more bittersweet. Good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You think you got away with something and you didn't.
No.
Yeah.
But truly, I bet you his life had reflected sorrow, pain, suffering, even though he may not have internalized it. You can't do a crime like that. You can't do something like that and just be like, and I'm just good and I'm just going to be good. It follows you. It affects your conscience, even if you don't recognize it.
Yeah, it taints your soul.
Taints your soul. Yeah. Okay,
Wow.
so now tell me about the phone call.
So the detective called me back and said that the state attorney, since there was no physical evidence, or anything like that, that they wanted to know if I'd be willing to make a phone call and try to get him to confess over the phone.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, okay. So we went down to the police station on a Tuesday night. We went down on June 20th of 2017, went down to the police station, and the other officer that was supposed to have the recording device wasn't there. So we had to reschedule for Wednesday night. And I looked at my husband and I'm like, but we have Bible study tomorrow night, or we have church tomorrow night. We can't do it tomorrow night. We can come back Thursday. And he's like, no, we'll come back tomorrow. And because September 11th of 2016 is when I went up in front of the church and gave my life to Christ. And then January 28th of 2017 is when I was baptized. So I was like really going to church, following all that. So I was like, no, we have to go to church. And he's like, no, God's doing this for a reason. I'm sorry, excuse me. And he's like, God's doing this for a reason. And so we went back on June 21st. We sat in the room, kind of like you see on the cop TV shows, had a long table. I had the two detectives sitting across the hall from me. And they're like, okay, here's the phone number. You're going to pick up your cell phone. You're going to call. So they turned on the cameras in the room. And I called and there was no answer. They said, okay. So we waited a few minutes and we were all just sitting there talking. My now husband was in the room. They asked him to go ahead and get out. And then they filmed again because I was like, can we try and call again? And they just kind of looked at me like, because it's like in the middle of a conversation, but something just came to me just like, hey, try and pick up the phone again. So I picked up the phone and he answered.
Mm.
And just like just now, my heart just sank. And I was like, hey, his name. And he's like, hi. And I'm like, hey, it's Laura. He goes, Laura. And I said, Laura Hamilton, because that was my name at the time. He goes, hey, how are you? And I'm like, I'm good. How have you? He's like, oh, I've been doing good. And the detective said already told me to try to establish like a relationship with him as far as so that way he can't come back and say, oh, I didn't know who I was talking to. You know, like let him try to say family members or things that only he would know about my childhood.
Yeah.
So he's like, how have you been? And blah, blah, blah. He's like, how's your mom? How's your aunt? How's your grandma? And he was naming them by names. And I'm just like, okay, here we go. Yeah. And mind you, before we even went into the room to make the phone call, I was just praying and I was just praying to God. I'm like, just please, God, just give me the words because I don't know what I'm going to say. I hadn't talked to this guy or seen him since I was 12.
Mm-hmm.
So just to pick up the phone after all these years and just be like, hey, by the way, why did you make me do these things?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, how am I going to do it? So I just kept saying, God, just please give me the words. So he answers the phone and we start that. And I was like, I wasn't lying when I was saying, but I wasn't giving him too many of details of my personal life because I didn't feel he deserved to know any of that.
Yeah.
But I was like, I've been going to church and I've been trying to understand why these things happen and why you made me do this. And he responded with, it's a part of life. It's a part of growing up.
Ugh, disgusting.
And I was just sitting there like, and the detectives are just like, just like they were writing down, like, just say, yes, you're right. It was, and I was like, yeah, you're right. It was my fault. I understand, just to keep him, with him talking. But he had established, his kids' names, my mom's name, and all that. And then I had said something about my son. He goes, yeah, I think I met your son. And I'm like, when did you meet my son? And he goes, well, your mom and your grandma and your son were at a picnic one time at a park because they had some mutual friends. But I ended up finding out years later that my mom didn't even know he was going to be there. But it wasn't my son, it was my brother. Because when he said my grandma, I knew it couldn't have been my son because I was pregnant with my son. I was 7.5 months pregnant with my son when my grandma passed away.
Okay.
So I knew it wasn't my son. But just from him saying all these things, he had established all of this. Like, there's no way he could go back and say, oh, I didn't know who I was talking to.
Right.
Because you basically brought up family members and things that happened. And, I said your kids' names and things like that. So, it was, I think the detective said it was like a 12-minute phone call. It felt like it lasted for like 2 hours.
I'm
Oh, I
sure.
bet.
At the end of the phone call, I was like, okay, well, thank you for giving me the answers that I needed to, go forth with my healing and everything else. And he goes, yeah, hopefully we can stay in touch. And I did some probably non-godly things. And I was at the phone and I'm just like, yeah, sure. Hung up the phone and I literally burst into tears. They turned off the recording device, called my husband in the room, and they were high-fiving. They're like, we got him. He confessed. He confessed to all three. He says he only remembers 2 of the situations. He doesn't remember the third, but he remembered the first and the third. He said he didn't remember the second one. So that was just enough for them to be like, okay, we got him. That's all we needed.
Wow. Wow. Then
I
what
mean,
they went to his house and arrested him?
Yeah. So on June 22nd, they went to his house. They arrested him for 3 capital felony child molestation charges. He still had no idea why he was being arrested. Even once he got down to the police station, he was still so arrogant that he thought he got away with it, that they were like, his wife was like, I don't know what this is about, and this and that. And, when they got down to the police station, they had told him, you're being arrested on these charges. And they're like, do you know Alora? Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Do you know Alora Hamilton? He goes, yeah. He's like, as a matter of fact, I got a phone call from her last night. What, like, you get a phone call from somebody who you did this to at 9, and then the next day you're arrested, but you're not putting 2 and 2 together to figure out that, oh, wait, duh. Like,
Wow.
yeah, he just thought he got away with it for that long. And, he tried to play he doesn't have a good memory, this and that. And of course, the cops did what they do best. And they're like, okay, well, if we were to send you mail to the address you lived at, what address oh, it was blah, blah, blah. And he blurts out the address.
he's so stupid.
Yeah. And he even kind of said the same thing that my aunt said about 13. She wore these cute little shorts around the house and blah, blah, blah. And the detectives were like, she was 9.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
The other thing that came to my mind when you were saying it, I wonder if he's had so many instances like this that he didn't remember it was you,
Right.
because
Mm-hmm.
that's usually if a person has sexually abused one time,
Mm-hmm.
they said they have over 200, and it's actually more before actually anyone comes forward and they get prosecuted or any press
That
charges in.
many?
Yes.
Holy moly.
So
I
that's
did
why
not know
when
that.
we do background checks for stuff for people to come be an employee or whatever, that's the bare minimum that you should do, because typically there's so many things in the background that are not that haven't been brought to the light legally
Mm-hmm.
to where somebody's being charged with stuff to being held accountable. Okay,
Yeah.
so now tell us about the um, actual court case, the trial, and all of that.
That went on for, it was just a little bit over a year. Because he actually went to jail. He stayed in jail for 22 days. Then he got bonded out. And then, back and forth with the state attorneys. He didn't want to be registered as a sex offender. He didn't want this. He wanted the sexual charges to be dropped down to, I think it was like I forgot what degree felony. And I'm like, no, he's a sex offender. He admitted it to me on the phone, what he did to me. Like, what else do you guys need? Like, we have the recorded thing. Like, no, he needs to register as a sex offender because that's what he
He
is.
is.
And I didn't back down. I just continuously just was like, no, I'm ready to go to trial. Like, I will sit
God
up on the
bless you.
stand and I will, like, I already went through the hardest part. Like, even after the phone call, I couldn't be in a room or in a car without some kind of music playing, because literally the whole phone call would replay in my head.
Mm.
And I would just keep hearing his voice. So I constantly had to be playing music just to drown out the conversation in my head.
Yep.
So went through, plea deals. They wanted this, they wanted that. I'm like, no, not accepting that plea deal, not accepting that plea deal. Finally, against my judgment, they did a plea deal where he had to register as a sex offender, 10 years sex offender's probation, but will be on registered sex offender for the rest of his life. And that's what ended up happening. So on July 10th of 2018 is when they did the final hearing, which is when they sentenced him. And I was able to, and I didn't even know that I had even the chance to even do a victim's impact speech or anything like that. So I learned all that in March of 2018 when I started following Lauren Book and read her book, and then got in touch with a personal attorney, family attorney. And that's when they told me I had the opportunity to do a victim's impact speech, speak up at the hearing, and, kind of share like my reaction, I guess, to the plea deal and everything else. And the day we went to court, it was my husband and one of my best friends at the time. And my best friend and I had walked into the bathroom, and as I was walking out into the little hallway, he was walking towards me. And I made eye contact with him. And my husband at the time had called me to let me know he was going to the bathroom. And I literally just took my phone and I was like this to my best friend. And she's like, "Who is it?" And all I could do was point to my ring finger because I couldn't even speak because he was right there. And then all that pictured in my head was, oh my God, this guy's going in the bathroom. My husband's in the bathroom. My husband's going to see him. What's going to happen in the bathroom? So my best friend and I go and we sit in the little bench in the court in the hallway of the courthouse, and he comes out and walks straight towards me to
Like
try
he was
and
going to talk to
talk
you.
to me. Yeah, like, oh hey, let's catch up. Want to give you a hug. Thanks for calling me. Like, I don't know what he was thinking, but my best friend was literally standing right in front of me, and I'm just like, get me out of here. I gotta go. And I'm like kind of like looking around, like, where's the nearest stairs, elevator, something. My husband comes walking out of the bathroom, and I literally grab my husband's hand and just start like speed walking down the hallway. And he's like, "What's going on?" I was like, "I got to get out of here." And we walked all the way down to the end of the courtroom. He's like, "What happened?" And I told him. And we looked down the hallway of the courthouse, and he's just standing there with his wife, and I'm not sure who else was there. It was another woman, and they were just sitting there staring at me. And I'm like, "Quit staring at me! Like,
Yeah.
stop!" My husband's like, "Babe, calm down, calm down, calm down." I'm like, "No, he's staring at me like I did something wrong. I didn't do anything wrong." We go into the courtroom. Him and his attorney walk in. As even as they were walking out, he kept staring at me, and I was at the end, and then my husband was in the middle, and then my best friend was at the other side. And I guess my husband felt my knee get up like this because I was getting ready to leave to walk out of the courtroom because the devil was definitely getting in my head that day. My husband grabbed my leg, scooted me over, and put my best friend on this side so they sandwiched me in so I couldn't leave the courtroom. Um, and that's when I had the opportunity to do the victim's impact speech. And they had told me before, my attorney had told me that I have the right to have the courtroom cleared out when I gave my victim's impact speech. But I was like, you know what? No, I've come this far. I want everybody to hear what this guy did to me.
Yeah.
And I also felt that the longer I prolonged it by them having to get everybody out of the courtroom, the more the fear was gonna get into me. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna do this.
Rip off the Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Did they play the recording in court?
no,
Oh,
no.
good.
I wish they would have.
Well, I feel like that would have re
Traumatized?
traumatized you.
It it probably would have, but then maybe I don't know if his wife, because I don't know what he told his wife,
Sure.
you know,
Okay.
you know.
True.
So, but I was standing here, the state attorney was standing here, his attorney, and then he was standing there. And I went through my whole, speech, and I was like, and I leaned over, and my husband told me this after the fact. So I don't even remember it. I leaned over and I was like, "And you told me it was a part of life. It's a part of growing up, and I would never let you take that from me." And I
Mm.
literally just bursted out in tears. You know, it was hard, but it definitely made me feel so much better that I confronted him and I told him that you didn't ruin me by doing this.
Nice. Good statement to say.
Wow. Just wow. And to see justice be served. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I
Amazing.
still don't think he got anything as far as, I mean, yeah, he got 22 days in jail. God only knows, because you know what they do to child sex offenders, child molesters in jail. But still, they probably had him segregated somewhere else because he was in his 70s, but the state attorney's office, and they kept telling me that because of his age, his health, and the things he's done in the community, that's why they were offering him a lower plea deal. And I'm like, let's see. I have health issues. I've helped rescue dogs and sea turtles, and I'm on Dolphin Freedom Foundations, and all of this stuff. So what? So if I go down the street and rob a bank, that's okay because of the things I've done in the community? Like, how does that even make sense?
No, it doesn't.
That was their reasoning for their plea deal.
So they do those things to grab at the heartstrings, obviously. Was it a trial with the jury or just the judge?
No, it was just a plea. It wasn't even a trial. We didn't even go to trial. It went straight to the plea deal.
Oh, okay. So they just do that to, it's not okay, but
Yeah,
it's done
no.
to lessen the his interpretation of what's going on because
Hmm.
ultimately they do have to defend him, which
Yeah,
ugh,
yeah.
but so I know and I'm so sorry because that only compounds, I think, what it solidifies even more like, hey, look, this guy's a great stand-up person. It's like, who cares? He's not a stand-up person. We're
Yeah,
focusing on one time, or at least in your history, we're focusing on what he did to me, what he took from me.
yeah.
It's not
Right.
He
okay if
wasn't
he,
that then.
yeah, it's not okay, even if he was, because you know how
Yeah.
many friggin' people are out there doing good? That's what they do, though. They
Yeah.
justify their bad with the acts of good that they do, and that does not justify the bigger issue of the abuse. It just doesn't.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
it really that really frustrates me because there's so many people like, for instance, there was a case that just came out like P. Diddy. Let's just talk about that. He'll talk about all the virtuous things and all the humanitarian things that he does. Meanwhile, he's got a plethora of victims. Jeffrey
Hmm.
Epstein, same type of person, right?
Hmm.
Hmm.
He did a lot of philanthropy and good stuff and good work, yet he was a total scumbag perpetrator who
Hmm.
violated many people, and there's many women and men's lives who are completely destroyed because of these type of people.
Yeah.
So I know I don't need to go on a soapbox about this stuff, but it really pisses me
Yeah.
off.
Oh, I know. And I felt like I was, like victimized all over again because,
Yes.
it felt like the state was more concerned with, like his situation, his health situation, and he ended up finding out that he had prostate cancer. I'm like, okay, God, I was like,
Yeah.
but what about me? And then the judge had made a comment to me that, and yes, I've moved past all of that. I haven't let all of that define me. But she was like, "Oh, you look like you've done well for your life." And I'm like, "You don't even know what I've gone through. Like you don't
Right.
know the
Yeah.
trauma, you don't know the counseling, you don't know the sleepless nights, the nightmares, the trust issues, the
Yeah.
insecurity, the bad relationships that I, put myself in because of all of this. Yeah, I may
Yes.
look like it on the outside, but on the inside, I was a train wreck,
Yep. It really
because
does.
I had to hold it together.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm so
Wow.
sorry.
Yeah, me too.
But again, it goes right back to the bravery. So brave. I'm so like in awe. Like we just, and I know you would give it all to the Lord has given you this bravery, this courageous voice. And to be honest, this phrase is to be a voice for the voiceless. And
Hmm.
even if in that moment, I don't care how, so there was, let's say there was 10 people in the room. You weren't the only one who was a victim that day. I
Hmm.
bet you
Yeah,
there was
yeah,
other people. And so it's impressive that you were able to stand up and stand strong. And it's just a redirect back to the Lord of how courageous He's created you to be.
yeah.
And so
Mhm.
now let's talk about how Trees of Hope comes into this story.
I was going to Calvary Chapel and Plantation, and I had learned about Trees of Hope. And it was right after the um, the plea deal and everything else, because right after I did the plea deal, I started working with Marcy's Law to try to get Amendment 6 passed, to try, for the victims, learning about hearings, because again, I felt like I was not included in a lot of the plea deals, a lot of the communication. I didn't feel like I was being protected. So I was working a lot with that. And I just kept asking God, like, where do you want me? Like, do you want me on the law side of this? Or do you want me on like the survivor side of this? Because I just kept getting calls for, I ended up going to Tallahassee to try and talk to, Congress up there to, about Amendment 6. Um, and something just kept calling me over to the survivor side. And I was like, okay, well, I need healing. And so I started taking Trees of Hope in 2019.
But wait, sorry, I
And
don't mean to stop you, but how did you hear about Trees of Hope
oh,
at
sorry, through
church?
through Calvary Chapel, they were talking about different Bible study groups and different groups that they that they are affiliated with. Like
Okay.
like I know they do. Oh my goodness, what's
Celebrate Recovery.
Thank you. Yes. And I saw Trees of Hope and I looked it up and then I was like, oh, for sexual, because it was, if I remember correctly, it was a speaker. I believe it was a lady speaker that came to the church one day. I cannot remember her name right now. And she was talking about, being a survivor of sexual abuse. Um,
I
and
have
that's
no
when
idea who
I
that
don't
was.
remember her name. I'd have to look it up. I don't remember her name. And then that's when I was like, you know what? I think I need to go through this. And so then that's when I looked on, Calvary's website and I saw Trees of Hope. And then I started looking up Trees of Hope and I signed up for the class. And I was like, you know what? And I honestly felt at that time that I was healed. I thought I went through the trial. I got him. He was sentenced. I was good. Yeah, wrong. I was not. And it didn't take it. I didn't realize that until I took the second class in 2024.
Mm.
The first class was Susan. And I took both classes with Susan, but the first class was Susan. Um, I definitely, reading Shelter from the Storm, it was almost like I was telling somebody my story and they were writing my feelings and my thoughts and my emotions down in it with so many things that were in there. And I didn't feel like I was like the only person
Mm-hmm.
that this happened to. So it was very relatable. Um, it was hard. It was emotional to like literally sit down and like pour my feelings out and to share it. Um, but it definitely brought a lot of healing the first class.
Mm.
Um, and I remember Susan's amazing. Let me just tell you, she's amazing. I love her. She gave us rocks and she told us to take a rock for everybody that we needed to forgive. And I had made a joke and I'm like, do we throw these through the window? And she's like, no, you don't throw them through the window. I was like, oh, okay, never mind then. She's like, you can write down the person that you need to forgive on a rock or whatever. She's like, but whenever you want, it's up to you. You take the rock and when you forgive that person, you throw that. And then that means you're throwing, you're forgiving them. And I always thought before Trees of Hope and before church that if I forgave them, 9 and 13, that it was basically saying, it's okay what you did to me.
No.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand that forgiveness, like it says in Ephesians 4, get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all evil behavior. Instead, be kind to each other, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, just as God, through Christ, has forgiven you.
Yes.
So it took me being able to forgive them for me to really be on my journey of healing also. And the night that I threw the rocks into the water, I literally felt like I lost like 1,000 pounds.
I
Like it was
believe
just like a weight was just gone away. It was like, you know what? I'm not forgiving you saying what you did to me was okay because it's not, you
it
know.
and will be.
Yeah. Yeah.
That forgiveness is so much for you
Mm-hmm.
and being able to be free from the torture that, like, you know what I mean? Like we've given so many years away with unforgiveness. We've
Yeah.
given them to the perpetrator in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
like, and I felt the same way, like a weight lifted off of me to forgive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you have to get through those myths of forgiveness. It's not that it was okay. It's not that my feelings aren't valid. It's forgiveness doesn't always lead to reconciliation. All of those things you have to
Mm-hmm.
process through to get there. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you can feel like if I could forgive this, I could forgive anything at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody cuts me off the road now. I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
fine. I'll see you at the next red light.
Yeah. Life becomes a lot more manageable, I think,
Yeah.
too, because doing hard things builds a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
That a lot of people don't want to work that muscle. And
No.
that's part of the faith journey. It's, if you can forgive this, like I said, or even some of the ladies that have taken my class, if you can walk through this journey and do this hard stuff, there's nothing too hard for you at this point. If
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can bring up the muck, the mire, the dirt, the messy, and know that you're still loved by God and you can survive bringing this out into the
Mm-hmm.
open,
Mm-hmm.
you're capable of anything at this point.
Yes.
It's a muscle that I'm so grateful that all three of us have exercised that muscle and we can help other people do the same. And I'm sure
Hmm.
Laura, you've probably encouraged people to take the class and that's your way of saying, hey, if I could do it, you could do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that you're worth going through healing. I don't think people actually, or women specifically, like I know my worth, but do you know that you're worth going through healing, which means
Hmm.
doing the hard work, looking inwardly, seeing how much it's affected you. That's like a gold mine if you're
Yeah.
willing to go through it
Hmm.
and do it, because we in Deb, we talk about this all the time. Like a lot of people just breeze over the healing part because it is
Hmm.
hard. But when you're willing to look inward, the woman I am today is completely different than the woman I was when I first walked through my first shelter from the storm study. It's I don't even know who that woman is
Hmm.
anymore. And I'm so thankful that God allowed me, that He challenged me, and that He let me go through hard stuff like this to be purified, come forth as gold, and to be more Christ-like. Because ultimately, I think these things, as in looking inward, going through healing, addressing hard stuff, forgiving, they make you all Christ-like.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
For
no
sure.
other way you get Christ-like except through suffering,
Mm. Yeah.
sadly.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's not fun, but we all have to go through it in one way, shape, or form or another. And, I mean, I don't know who, I mean, would I want this to happen to anybody? No, I don't want this to happen to anybody. But, I've turned all the bad that happened to me into, I think, good and positive. And if I can just help one person, one little girl share her story, get it out to where it doesn't happen to her again. And that was my thing about going down to the police station too, because I'm like, what happens if there's another little girl that he's done this to that's scared to go forward?
Yeah.
At least now, if I come forward and they look and they see, oh, wait, he did this to somebody else, maybe they'll have the courage to come forward.
Yep.
Yeah, you took an amazing, brave step that most of us don't take.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're grateful for you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Proud of
Thank
you,
you.
grateful for you.
Hmm.
So just want to close with a few things, just ask a couple of questions. What would you say to a woman listening right now that hasn't told anyone or hasn't told her story yet?
Tell someone, anyone, get it out of your head where the devil wants it to stay so he can continue to take over your life and your thoughts. Because once you tell someone, you can begin the healing. I kept it in a locked box in the back of my head with duct tape and gorilla glue and a key that I threw away and I don't even remember where I threw it for many, many years. Um, I wish I would have spoken up more when I was younger, and maybe just continue to tell people until something happened.
Yep.
And does that mean that 13 might not have happened? I don't know. But all I can just all I can say is just tell someone, share your story, just get it out. The devil just wants to keep putting that in your head that it was your fault, you asked for it, you did it. And the minute you pull the devil's pants down and you embarrass him, that's it. He
Mm-hmm.
can't continue to control your mind, your thoughts anymore. And just give it to God. Just keep praying. God, put me in the place that I need to be. Give me the words. Give the police officer or whomever, you know, the the words and the ability to handle the situation the right way and get justice for what happened to them.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Amen.
Amen. Yeah. All right. So the last question is so as we know, you're not just a victim, you're not just a survivor, you're not just a thriver. Honestly, you're like an overcomer. I wish there was a ER for braver. You're braver. You're
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 braver.
like you're braver. I mean, you're so many of those things. So You are, not only are you super brave, but you're a fighter, you're a truth teller, and you're a light to other people. So what does it mean to you to be not just a hashtag? Because I know that the reason why we named it that is so many things, but a lot of times this Me Too movement, it put people, women specifically, in a place, in a label that I think did them no good because it did not give them a lot of people joined into the Me Too movement or that hashtag or that survivor, the victim, or here I am without going through the hard work of healing. So, what does that mean to you to be not just a hashtag?
Um, I look at it as I'm a daughter of God, and I'm a voice for the women who are afraid to come forward to tell their story. And I'm not just a hashtag, I'm a living testimony that with God, all things are possible. Give it to
Hallelujah.
God, put it in God's hands, and He will work it out.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, that was great. That should be our slogan. We're living testimonies of God's
God's goodness.
goodness
Yeah,
and his great work and redemption in our lives.
yeah.
Love that. So, Laura, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm so sad and burdened that we came to know each other in this way, but I'm
Mhm.
also on the other side so very, very, very thankful that Trees of Hope was able to be there for you, that whoever this woman was that spoke at Calvary Plantation, because I don't know, I have no idea who that was, but thank God for her. Maybe she was like a
Hmm.
little angel. I have no
Yeah.
idea. Um, and I'm just I keep going back to like praise God that there is such a ministry that is able to serve women in this way and
Hmm.
to allow them to not only heal but to live a full free life.
Yeah.
Because I've said this on the podcast before, I don't know how somebody gets sexually abused and like the way a lot of these stories are, even a minimum version of sexual abuse, and is able to pick up their head every day, be an active person in the community, have relationships, have children, have intimacy at all. It literally scars all of those things
Hmm.
Hmm.
but God, right? And so I'm sure
Yeah.
we would all say that, but God, He redeems, He heals, He replaces,
Hmm.
He gives new memories, He takes back what was lost. And
I
so,
remember I was speaking at one of the Marcy's Law events outside of the little poll stations, the voting stations, and I'm not like big on public speaking or anything like that, but I was just like, okay, I need to share like a little bit of my story and explain to these people why they needed to vote yes on Amendment 6. And as I was getting off stage, this little girl, she was probably like 7 or 8, she's like, can I give you a hug? And I was like, yeah. And she gave me a hug and she goes, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I'm just like, oh my
Wow.
God, like, but
Tender.
who knows if maybe something like that happened to her and maybe that was her, I don't know. But it was just like, wow, I just looked down at her like I was close to your age when that happened.
right.
Yeah.
People forget because they see you now as a grown adult and they see the you now. They don't realize the innocence unless you have little toddlers running around your house.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
that's why this has become so real to me, is
Hmm.
because I do have little toddlers. And when I look at their innocence and their mindset, it's so pure, it's so innocent, it's so um like unviolated and like a little dove, you know? And
Hmm.
my one son, I think I don't know if I shared this with you, Laura, when we talked, but he came to us through fostering and he had over 21 broken bones in his
Oh
body.
my goodness.
So he's
Wow.
gone through more pain and suffering than probably most people in the entire world have ever gone through. But when I look at him and I see just the innocence and the carefreeness, and that one day I have to unfortunately burst that bubble by telling him what's happened to him, it just
Hmm.
breaks my heart.
Yeah.
So, to protect innocence and to protect purity as long as we can, and that's our calling as parents to do that. And that's why
Hmm.
it's so important that the prevention work that we do, we fight so hard to help educate parents because just a simple act of vetting people that are in your life or trusting your gut or recognizing when your daughter's got something's changed in her.
Yeah.
and not just ignoring it, but saying, hold on, I'm going to lean into this and I'm going to talk with
Hmm.
her and I'm going to try to find out what's going on here. Being intentional. It could do so much. It could protect your child from ever having to be a survivor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. My daughter-in-law, the Christian band For King and Country, there's a song that says God Only Knows.
Yeah.
That's the name of the song. And she's like, every time I hear that song, I think of you. It's like God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they think about you, you know. And every time I hear that song, I'm like, yeah, God knows, but
Mm,
He's healed me through all this.
right. And who
So
cares what they think? It's only matters
yeah.
what God only knows of what his promises are of you and how what he sees of you. You're made in the image of God. You're
Hmm.
purified. You're whole. You're redeemed. You're forgiven. You're chosen. You're handpicked, you
Yeah.
know? And that's, yeah, you're beloved. You're
Yeah.
beloved.
Yeah. I remember Susan would have us put on the mirror, she'd write, I am loved, I am blessed, I am, all these different things. And we'd have to hold it up in the class and we'd have to look at ourselves saying it.
Yeah.
And you can see I have a big mirror right there. And then on all the little mirrors going around the side, I have all these different things. I am loved. I am blessed. It does not make things easy. It makes them or faith does not make things easy. It makes things possible from
Yes.
Luke.
Hmm.
So I have all these little, Bible verses around and I put mirrors in here because I want to be able to come in here and see how far I've come.
Yeah.
And now even if people do look at me, and I don't think that in my head anymore, that they look at me and they know what happened to me, but even if they did, and even if they do know what happened to me, I don't care because I know it wasn't my fault.
Exactly. And you're
That's right.
covered. You're
Yeah.
covered.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, that's an important thing that Sue does. And I think in the moment, a lot of times it can be like just a task, like, oh, I'm blessed, I'm pure, I'm clean, I'm all that. But I always recall people bringing it up later
Hmm.
and remembering it. And
Yeah.
that is what I try to tell people is push through, do it. There's a purpose. And even if you don't see it now, it will help you down
Yeah.
the road.
Yeah.
Planting those seeds,
Peace.
of
Yeah. And there's some
identity.
days, yeah, and there's
Identity.
some days that you don't want to hold up the mirror because you don't feel like you're that. But the more you do it, the more you just start looking at yourself and you're like, you look in the mirror now. Now I go into the bathroom, I look in the mirror and I'm like, you know what? I'm loved. I'm good. I'm a child of God. I'm blessed. I could be so many different things right now if I would have taken a different road and let all of these things affect me in a different way.
Yeah.
But instead I went down this other road with some, speed bumps and turns and a
Of course.
couple hills, even though we are mountains and even though we live in Florida. But still, it's taken me different roads and it's led me to here. And like I said, if I can just help one person get their story out and heal, and Trees of Hope can help with that, watching this video, then I'll share my story every single day for the rest of my life if it helps one person.
You're the prime person to become a facilitator. What?
Yeah.
You need to be a facilitator. That's your next step.
Yes, it is. I've been working on it.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Let's
Good,
go.
good,
You
good.
don't
Let's
have,
make
yeah.
that happen.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
make that happen.
Okay.
Okay, guys, I'm so humbled. I'm so honored. I say this, you only will understand it if you have been through what we've been through. When you are in the room with other survivors and they share their story. I feel it. I don't know about you, but I feel it. I don't want to speak for you, but I'm sure you relate to it, which is you feel like you're in a room filled with royalty for some
Mm.
reason. And as in this person has gone through so much and they've experienced so much and they're wearing like a crown of beauty for ashes on their head, and it makes me feel like I'm amongst queens, like I'm amongst just royalty. It's the only thing I can say. And so it's such an honor to be in this ministry, to be serving here, to be a part of what we get to do, to be on this podcast. It really is. I don't take it for granted. And every time I get to listen to one of these stories, I'm just like, I don't know why you chose me to do this, but thank you.
Well,
Amen.
I thank God every day that He chose you too, because it's helped me. you know, immensely just getting through everything. I mean, 2 classes of Trees of Hope, and you know, like I said, the first one I thought I was good. I thought I was healed. And then I took
Mm.
the second class, and then it was like, oh, wait a minute. That one really opened up my eyes. And, you know, it was definitely more emotional, the second one, but I learned so much more about myself and about why I've turned out to be who I am and why I did the things that I did. And
Yeah.
now I can move forward and try to make sure that those things don't happen ever again either.
Yes.
Yeah. We're so grateful.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll see you on the next one, everyone. Thank you so much for being here.
Bye,
Mwah.
guys.
We love
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.